So welcome to probably about my 20th or 30th webinar. So I was looking at a list of webinars that I've created over the last couple of years, and there are a lot. And of course, I'm able to provide you that information whenever you require it from any of the other presentations. And sometimes, yeah, reference other presentations and then provide whole, documents and presentations that have been created in the past, either the recording or the actual PowerPoint presentation. So let's get sharing screens. So as you can see, I've got a few presentations all kind of feeding off one another. So today we're talking about MIRO, which is a tool, and I'll describe exactly. I've got a whole range of different descriptions that will enable you to be able to understand what this tool is and what it's capable of, and how I use it, how potentially you will use it in the future to help you. But there are also other competitors of MIRO that I'll also be sharing. So I'm not particularly wedded to MIRO itself. It's a great tool, but there are others, and they're equally, some of them are equally as capable. However, I've spent most of my time and most of my experiences with MIRO, so I can use it to potentially a higher degree. So today we'll actually be focusing on sales processes and how we can use MIRO to map those out. And taking a look at our sales funnels and making sure that we've accurately captured them and we've documented them accurately, and why you would document a process. That's obviously a really important question to take a look at, as and of course it's part of the business building process, but we always have to reflect on why is it part of the business building process. Okay, so I think you guys already, those in attendance already know who I am. So my name's Tristan, and I've just updated my LinkedIn to show Perth, so I'm back home for a while. Yeah, so I cover a whole range of different topics within the small business sector, the startup, scale-up sector. I also help solopreneurs, sole traders, and contractors, and people with all different kinds of business models. And I help them by optimizing what they're doing and making sure it's properly captured using visual strategy tools. So I'll show you a few of those just to give you a taste of what a visual strategy tool is. And also, we also need to look at workflows. So today we're looking a little bit more at workflows, but it's important for you to be reminded that there are these amazing visual strategy tools that you can use to indeed help you with your strategy and execution piece. So strategy, big focus on strategy. It's all well and good to implement any tool, but if you don't have the right strategy, then the business model isn't going to work and your business won't function and you'll make a big loss, which is not fun. So that's why I have a huge focus on small business strategy. And I also work with founders to increase their capabilities and their capacity. So that's why I explain what I do as entrepreneurial capacity building. It's a very founder-centric approach. So there's 4 key topics I want to cover within this hour. One is like how to use MIRO to map out your sales processes. So we might actually, I'll have a play around with some of the ones that I built earlier and just show you how easy it is. We'll touch on the importance of why it's, almost 100% necessary to document your processes, particularly if they're reasonably complicated, which sometimes some of the processes that we create, so for example, within Business Station or the invoicing and financial management and all that kind of stuff, turns into quite a big flow. Fortunately, I don't need to deal with that too much because it's handled by program management, but there are a whole range of flows that are kind of complicated that I do need to handle, and I'll show you some of them, and that'll hopefully provide you a bit of an aha moment in terms of, oh my gosh, maybe I should look at modeling my own processes to kind of explicate them and have them reviewed, or at least review them myself and reflect on, what can actually be streamlined and optimized, and what can be automated as well. The importance of getting your processes reviewed by an experienced advisor or mentor, like the benefits of doing that. We'll be touching on a couple of the key points there, and some of the other processes that are not the sales process, but might be interrelated with the sales process that you might elect to map out using free software, which does this, like MIRO or Mural or Strategizer. Strategizer isn't free. It's got a 30-day kind of limit. So MIRO, you get 3 boards, but actually you can potentially create more if you kind of duplicate them within the same board. So you might have 2 business models. So say you don't know which one you're going to go after, or one is a business model that you've already activated and is in the exploit phase, then keep that one up the top, and then down the bottom you might have a business model that you haven't yet fully fleshed out, and so that's in the exploration phase. Now I've got it on my list to take more of a look at Mural, so that's the one I haven't yet taken a look at, but effectively all of these 3 are related to online visual collaboration between multiple people, multiple minds working on multiple parts of the business. So without further ado, let's move forward. Just make sure that can everyone see my screen, and can everyone hear me clearly? Is everything coming through clearly? So no comments, so that's a pretty good sign. Fantastic, thanks Andrew for that. So let's take a look at let's take a little bit more of a look at MIRO just quickly to see what it is and how it works. So I do understand that Carlos is already using it, and I can see the updates coming through from you, Carlos, and you're doing exactly the right thing. You're iterating your canvases. So you've used it for the business model canvas, which I'll show everyone in a second. But the key, the value proposition of doing it digitally, actually having a digital representation of your processes, workflows, or your strategy canvases, is that you can update them and iterate them, which is exactly what they're designed to do, right? That's their core purpose. So MIRO can be described as, well, it describes itself as the visual collaboration platform for every team, a whiteboard, but better, where teams solve monster-sized problems and get work done together online, #solve together, right? So yeah, it's a pretty versatile package and it has a whole range of templates as well, and kind of, yeah, these templates that can be adapted. So there's millions of them, and they range from strategy and planning to, a lot of designers use them. You can even do things like wireframing, some basic wireframing in them, and then creating, flows and maps and diagrams, and all, it's great for ideation. You can move things around really easily. One of the reasons why I use it is that you can move the sticky notes around, you can change the colors, you can type things on them. So it is like a whiteboard that you actually attach sticky notes to in a certain respect. So the 2 main uses I use MIRO for is making use of the visual strategy templates, and of course mapping out my process flows. And you might be actually shocked or surprised, hopefully not shocked, because that's not the kind of impression I want to leave you, on a Wednesday afternoon, but surprised how many flows there are in a business that on the face of it appears to be quite simple, which is, business advisory. But yeah, I'll unpack for you like all these processes that I have to undertake as someone that engages in this kind of business. So yeah, definitely take a look. I definitely recommend the business model canvas over the lean canvas, because lean canvas is more focused on product and service. Business model canvas is, as it says, focused on business model. business model is more important because it's all encompassing, right? Whereas the product is only one component of the greater business model. So if we exclusively just focus on the lean canvas, then we're actually missing out on some of the key details that we need to capture, like what supply chain we're in, and who our key partners are, and what level do we connect in to the supply chain. Got some comments coming through. Yes, a wireframe. So a wireframe is what designers use to design software, or indeed your website, right? So that's the design process, where you've got a full set of screens, user interfaces, and they're connected together. And if you click on the buttons, it actually goes between the screens. And it explains to the developer exactly how the software product or the website is actually going to, work in the future, right? So yeah, if you want some wireframes done, then go and speak to a UI, UX, or UX UI developer, depending upon which country you're from, and they will create for you a set of wireframes that, hopefully are quite user-friendly. And I've seen this industry shift very quickly over the last, 10 years really. And now the focus is more on product strategy. So the market has matured past UX now to a certain degree, because a lot of optimizations happened with user experience in the past couple of years. Okay, next slide, please. It's annoying when it just doesn't go to the next one. Okay, so this is obviously some information you can read and implement yourself, but it's really easy to get started with MIRO, and it's free. As long as you don't need huge capability, like millions and millions of boards, and then it will upsell you into a paid account. And so actually I'm on millions of teams, and I've got 3 boards within each of these teams, and each of these teams just signifies my collaboration with different small businesses and startups. So if you look down the left-hand side, I've got millions and millions of teams. And so somehow they haven't managed to upsell me from having huge numbers of boards running concurrently. So I think I've somehow found some sort of loophole. I'm not advocating for using this loophole. It's just kind of happened serendipitously. Yeah, so I get a huge amount of value out of MIRO without needing to even subscribe at this stage. In the future, they might crack down on that somehow, but in the interim, it's all pretty cool. So the next step is you have to create a team, and then you need to invite people to your team. So either your internal team and or advisors, so people that you want to have review what you're doing. Then you can create a board using this big button with a plus sign, and then it opens all the templates, and you can choose from there. Select a template, and then you go in and actually customize it. So you populate it with your project or venture information. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not that much more difficult than it sounds. Share access with your team and or advisors. So there's a button on the top right-hand side once you actually create them. And I request that founders actually provide me edit access so I can go in and actually make comments. And so effectively what they're doing is responding to those comments by updating. So my favorite one, as you guys know, if you've been, meeting with me on one-on-ones or, in other workshops, is the business model canvas. And so this is my business model canvas. These are comments, reminders to myself. However, for other founders, I typically will provide insights and comment potential issues, potential opportunities, potential constraints, a whole variety of different things. But and then what happens is that we go and iterate. So we might have one meeting and then we iterate the canvas based on my comments. and then we might have a second, and then there's a second iteration, and then a third, and by the end, you've actually got, you may have started with zero canvas when you join the program, and then you populate the canvas, it might be 30% right. Then after the second iteration, it might be 60, and then we might get it up to 80 by the third iteration. And then I kind of hand it over to people and say, well, you got to keep this going. You got to keep iterating until you hit business model fit, which is where your business model actually works and serves end customers with the support of partners and allies, offering them the right value propositions. But yeah, so that can be an incredibly valuable process to go through, but we won't harp on too much about business model canvases because we're talking about sales today, right? So how do you create a process flow chart in MIRO so as to be able to capture your sales processes? Again, you just click the new board, and then all the templates come up, and you search for the word flow, open a flow chart, and then you start to model out your flow chart. And I'll show you some examples of what mine look like, just so that you understand what it might look like once you're done. And then you share access with team members or advisors for that particular canvas, right? Then they can go in and if they need to make changes. I typically leave most of the changes up to the founders, right? Unless they've done something that's a little bit unexpected, like put the wrong things in the wrong place completely. Most of the time, I just predominantly leave a lot of comments and get them to make the changes. So I'm giving them the ownership, and then the accountability for that particular chart, and then hoping that they will continue to solicit feedback so as to iterate towards the right flow or strategy for them and their business in their particular market. So if you're not a digital native, so most digital natives, people that were probably 40 and below, can figure out how to use this without any instructions. It's pretty self-explanatory. But if you're a little in the next set of age groups, then there's a whole bunch of videos that MIRO have put together to help you figure out what's going on. And yeah, I've just realized that it's self-explanatory for people that use similar tools and have done in the past, but it's a little less easy to wrap your head around if you're not obsessed with the internet and all the cloud technologies that the younger folk tend to use. So these are what my sales processes look like on MIRO, and we can open them in a sec. Actually, that might be quite beneficial. But effectively what they are is you've got your points of origination, or where you source your leads from, and then they go through this like maze of different options, and then some of them convert and some of them fall through the cracks, right? But effectively these are like decision points, right? There'll be a question that needs to be asked before they move forward and before they convert. So understanding these yes/no questions is kind of important. And it's only after gaining a certain level of experience with trying to do it and not it kind of backfiring that you can start to filter through all of the different prospects and actually qualify them correctly. So we'll take a few questions. We'll look at some of the questions that apply to my sales process maps. So let's open it here. So for some reason it's not displaying. So yeah, this is my business model canvas. 1 second, it's thinking. Business model canvas, and then here are all, won't go into any of the ones that are not mine. So you've got business model canvas and empathy map here, and then I've actually got a different account which interfaces with this account, which has all my sales, all my workflows all on the one sheet, and then you've got I've got a value proposition canvas as well, which is cool. So let's take a little bit of quicker look at what the hell's going on with me and my kind of sales process. So there's one, so this is the workshop one. So yeah, don't be alarmed. You're kind of on this journey yourself. So typically how people find the webinar or the workshop is they might look at my newsletter, or they might look at a newsletter related to Business Station. They might go to the events page. They might go to QI Hub, which is Queensland's startup ecosystem platform, LinkedIn, Innovation Calibration News Network newsletter, Daily 5, which is Space Cubed, and I just happen to be in Space Cubed, so obviously that's quite serendipitous. Brisbane Business Hub's Slack group or Startup News, and there's a bunch of others as well. But anyway, these are the points of origination where clients fall into the very top of the funnel, right? And then they register, or they go to the page and they go, yes, it is for me right now, or no, it isn't. And then they register, and then they have to decide whether to turn up, right? Is this urgent enough? Is this high enough up my, in terms of urgency, for me to actually carve out an hour or 2 hours to attend? And then they come to the presentation, and you guys will probably be thinking the same thing right now. Is this valuable to me? So is this a person of interest and value or not, right? So if you find this boring, which is fine, you're entitled to your own opinion, then you're not likely to want to come to any more of these, and you're not likely to potentially decide to join the program and access the one-on-one sessions. And then you might, so yeah, if you don't find it, if you find it valuable, then you might receive an email from me. And when you receive this email, you'll read through, you'll get the presentation. There'll be a call to action to say if you want to, actually work one-on-one in respect to whatever it is that we've discussed. And you might take a look at who I am in a bit more detail and understand if I'm of value to you in any other way. And then you'll make a decision about whether you want to book a discovery call to actually further that conversation and make sure that I am indeed that right person that you think I am, to have a good conversation with and to potentially work together through digital solutions program. And then you'll decide whether, well, actually this should be, oh yeah, that's right. So you decide whether to go straight and book, engage through the program or do a bit of discovery. And then based on, there's actually another layer to that. Then once you've done, so you're either converted at this point or you've got a high chance of converting, and you're just making sure that I am indeed understanding what your business is about and who you are and what you need to get out of the conversation moving forward. So that's just one of many limbs of this process. So you can imagine that it's very difficult to keep this, if you're operating in real time, it's very difficult to keep this kind of thing in your mind. And that's why it's important to get it onto the page. I've got some other processes as well, which I'll show you later, but this one is originating opportunity through LinkedIn. So that's a separate sales process and function that you might need to create. And sometimes I give people my one just so that they can think about how to do it for themselves, if indeed they're in the B2B, they've got a B2B business model and they're developing business in a kind of similar way. Although that said, sometimes it's difficult to do it through LinkedIn because LinkedIn has got considerably noisier. And so that means more people are receiving more messages and getting annoyed as a result, or ignoring them, just phasing them out. One thing that's quite difficult to do without, just purely digitally, is really to build trust through this process. Right, so you might be able to generate a whole bunch of leads, and even then, maybe they won't even take the first step into your sales funnel because of they're getting hit up left, right, and center, and they don't know you. So there could be an inherent lack of trust. And hence, that's why, maybe Tinder and Bumble are not doing as well as they've previously done, is because people have realized that, trust is an important dimension to this whole courting process, whether it be dating or whether it be sales. So with that in mind, don't be alarmed if you're part of the sales process. But you've probably seen some of the steps and you've probably gone, oh, yeah, I had to make that decision. It's good that you've actually now seen that, you can map out these decision-making processes using a flow diagram. Yeah, cool. So, yeah, one thing that I think is really important before you jump into the actual modeling part is to understand or identify the sources of leads, like the points of origination, and then understand how to tap into them effectively, right? So here's a list of 3 that I've identified as kind of key to what I do. There's LinkedIn, there's QI Hub, and there's Business Station. So the plus side of LinkedIn is you've almost got no limitations. It's like 100, you can message 100 people a day or something. They change it from time to time. And then you can automate LinkedIn, and because you can automate LinkedIn using bots and things, it gets really noisy. And that means that people start ignoring things because they're getting like 10 messages a day from people that they don't know, that are outside their network. Yeah, sometimes before you go and create a fully fledged workflow, you might create something like this table here, which lists the sources of qualified leads that you can tap into, and then a quick description about how you actually tap into them. So you add the founders, you direct message, you might send a blog, containing offer, or encourage them onto a 15-minute discovery call, register, yeah, and so that's the whole process. QI Hub is a little bit different, mainly through workshops. People stumble across these amazing workshops, and then they might attend, and then they might see that there's huge value there for them, and then they might book a discovery call. And so for each kind of product, it's a little bit different, and it also depends on the actual channel that you're tapping into. So you need to get what's called channel fit. You need to figure out what activities are required to activate that channel in a very particular way. Yeah, so the sales process, one way that I like to describe it is, it's a combination of an informational journey and an emotional journey. So people have to be feeling the right things, but they also need information to be able to have the decision, be able to move forward in terms of decision making. So the kind of questions that they might be almost subconsciously asking, and you might be asking right now, is like, what is this topic? Maybe not from what is this topic, and who is this guy, right? So those 2 questions might be pertinent to you right now. You're probably asking yourself a whole bunch of other questions as well, like, is this in any way similar to my business? Can this be applied to me? Am I at that stage where this is relevant knowledge? These kind of questions. Humans are really good at asking these internal questions, but maybe not explicating what those questions are at a given time. And so that makes figuring out what the sales process needs to be quite complicated at times, because you need to anticipate what the questions would be, and if there would be any objections, like sales objections and all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, so effectively the whole sales process is to take the person from complete ignorance and lack of awareness of who I am or what the product is, to, okay, I understand how to apply this and let's get this started. So yeah, it can be quite a complicated flow, and particularly when you make updates, that means you need to rewire the communications as well. So yeah, there's a lot of cutting and recutting of pitch decks that is really important. So when someone tells me that, you know, oh, I need you to go and write the pitch deck for them, me as the client, sometimes I can say, well, you know, I can make some improvements to it, but you know, you need to iterate based on customer feedback and based on customer conversations. So one of the things that was interesting that happened recently was I realized that either people didn't know what a business model canvas was, had seen one once and never used one before, or they'd seen it and maybe they'd applied it 10 years ago and then they've never revisited it. So part of my lead generation process now is to try to get the business model canvas back on the radar and also activate the use of this canvas a lot more than what's currently happening in Western Australia and Queensland. So yeah, people relapse into using business models. And that's what the government keeps telling them to do. So of course they're going to do that. You know, all the websites are talking about business plans. They're not talking about business models. So part of my communications is like, what is the difference between the two? And, you know, what are the similarities as well? And so hopefully that will help. And yeah, so the sales process, just to answer the third question, like how does it differ from the customer success journey? Sales process is like the first part of the customer success journey. So that's the pre-sales part. So I'll show you in my own MIRO board, like how all of these processes are interrelated. And so it starts to get a little bit complicated when you've got multiple like subroutines happening and they all are kind of interdependent. And that's what makes business quite tricky. So yeah, so effectively we've already reviewed those. So this is the flow for inviting prospects to join workshops and webinars and then converting into one-on-one sessions. And this is booking new clients straight in via LinkedIn for one-on-one sessions, right? So yeah, your flows will be different to this, but there might be some similarities in terms of decision-making checkpoints that your customers will move through. And yeah, then more broadly, you have to think about how do we measure, and this is really difficult because even people in marketing and sales forget to do this on their own business, right? Because they're doing it for clients, but then they don't have time to do it for themselves, right? So sometimes you get bottlenecks forming in the sales processes. So sometimes you need to actually measure the different rates between the different steps of the process. Sometimes there are holes in the process, like a key piece of information is missing, like what is a business model, which I recently identified. And interestingly, you know, even people from leadership positions in the WA ecosystem have forgotten about what a business model canvas is, although they probably knew about it in the past. But that just shows you that it's very easy to fall into the trap of the curse of knowledge. Just because you know something doesn't mean the prospect knows it, and often the prospect doesn't know it. So yeah, that's a dangerous assumption, and one that can definitely interfere with sales conversions a lot. Where are the bottlenecks? How can we increase the conversion rates? How can we decrease the amount of time we spent on these so we can break the sales process down into its key components, right? Prospecting, lead gen, lead nurturing, and sales conversion. So how do we reduce the amount of time that we have to invest? Because time is money and it's customer acquisition costs that we incur. And we need to minimize the customer acquisition cost and increase the customer lifetime value in order to have a viable business. And then the final question is, can we automate it or outsource it? So in the past, I've actually used Linked Helper for a while. I think I trialed it for a week or two. And I think it's good for some things, but it's not necessarily good for sales, right? So I've tried it. adding completely new people. It's good at automating that process, like finding interesting people and adding them, and then maybe getting them to follow different brands or something like that, or adding them to groups. But I don't think it's that easy to actually automate my entire sales process using this particular tool, which is annoying and a shame, but it is what it is. So let's run through the importance of documenting your processes. Let's see how we're going. We've got a quarter of an hour, so that should be just enough time to get through the rest of this. My mouse keeps working. So some of the reasons why you would document strategies and processes and procedures, you don't need to remember them. And you can explicate them, so you can make them more explicit for yourself and actually visualize them a lot better. Self-analysis, self-diagnosis, where if problems are happening, and advisors can review them, mentors can review them, subject matter experts can review them if that's relevant. And then, we can extend the team. So we can say, this is how sales work, Mr. Head of Sales, over to you now. Now I've kind of outsourced my sales function to someone else. Also, once you've got them, then you can communicate to anyone that is a stakeholder of any kind, like how you do a particular thing and what actually needs to be done. So the problem of not using these kind of tools, so in this slide, we kind of cover visual strategy tools, which, as I've described, are more like your business model canvases, your value proposition canvases, your empathy maps, and your business model portfolio maps. But equally, it can a lot of these things can apply to your workflows as well, right? So if you're in a team, you've got co-founders or you've got a team of some sort, then if you just communicate what needs to be done without actually providing a process workflow, then potentially it can be misinterpreted quite easily. So there are risks around clarity and understanding. And also, effectively what we're doing here is we're turning thoughts into actually a deliverable, so that it doesn't disappear. So all of us have millions of thoughts. I have a ridiculous number during any given day. It's just a smattering of random information. And so over the weekends, I have to untangle all that mess. And I've got a way of doing that, like millions and millions of notes, and then they get kind of organized into action plans and all that kind of stuff. But effectively, it's just all over the place. So our brains are not really wired or very good for this kind of thing. So that's why it's important to get it on the page. And then the non-linearity of some of the concepts we're trying to convey. And then, it reduces the risk of misinterpretation, and people not hearing what the actual process is or being able to pass the information, and various other things. And it's, it also makes it very difficult to iterate processes and strategies based on experimentation. So the first time that you map your processes and strategies, they're likely not to be correct. And you're likely going to have to iterate them dozens of times before you, and then the market changes and then you have to do it again. So we're constantly having to adapt to market conditions and behavioral changes as well. Humans change behaviors based on a whole variety of things. So it's important to do for so many different reasons. What about getting your processes reviewed by an experienced advisor or mentor? So created a little bit of a flow that kind of makes sense for this whole review process to happen. So firstly, I get the founders to actually document what, potentially, so they come to me with 3 or 4 issues that we can focus on. Then I prescribe a framework, like, please fill in this business model canvas or value proposition canvas or document for me your sales processes. And then I take a look at it. But I want to understand what's actually going on inside the founder first. And I'm not going to just give them the results, right? So I need to understand where they're up to in their thinking so that we can actually work together and I can meet them where they're at. And yeah, it's almost like a diagnostic that we go through and try to understand what's going wrong. For the visual strategy tools, sometimes I try to get founders to focus in a little bit more on a particular supply chain or a particular customer segment. So I apply some constraints to prevent them from, just running around like a headless chicken and, not finding the target. And then, yeah, it's iterated. But this actual slide was talking a little bit more generically about visual strategy tools, but effectively the process is very similar, right? So founder comes to me, discusses problems. I almost prescribe some frameworks that they need to work through in order to solve their own issues and help them with the decision-making process. So they fill that in, they submit them to me, and then I take a look at them and we work through and try to figure out what's going wrong and how to actually make it right. So it's no difficult. Another thing to think about as well is sometimes you're not 100% sure what your sales variables are. So for me personally, with respect to providing business advisory, often it's timing. So some people have the feedback, I wish I bumped into you 6 months or 3 years ago, or I'll need you in the distant future, which is always not a good sign. But they feel like they've actually surpassed what I'm offering based on how I describe it, or maybe they're not ready for it for whatever reason they might have. So there is a timing element to it. There's also a founder maturity. Are they, is the founder ready to work on their business, not just in their business? The best founders are obviously heavily geared towards improving how the machine works before turning the on button on, or actually maybe turning it on but to slow speed, but fixing it at the same time. Then you've got a level of proactivity and commitment. So not everyone has the same level of proactivity and commitment. So yeah, founders need to be extremely proactive and extremely committed in order to succeed. Business maturity, like how long they've been going. Sometimes people are more advanced than the advisors, which obviously means that they can't help so much. Although sometimes it's just a matter of using us as a sounding board, just to agitate your, almost do a strategy shake-up. So, more advanced founders are going to approach us for that kind of thing. Value perception. Do they understand the importance of what we're doing? And also how well my experience in sales copy aligns with their particular business model and vertical, and also how they learn and consume information. So sometimes they just figure that they can learn everything themselves, but the unfortunate fact is that will take them a very long time. So trying to be the expert at everything that a business requires is it's a losing battle. So some of the other processes you might need to map out using a tool like MIRO. So just running a little bit low on battery, so if I disappear, don't worry, I'm still hopefully alive. So some of the other processes, let's run through those. Oh wait, why involve an advisor? Okay, well, here's the final. Yeah, sorry. Not a question, but are you familiar with that method? I can't even pronounce it. Andrew, could you send me some details about that? So I'm currently halfway through the last part of the presentation, but I'm really interested in trying to understand what all these, I am interested genuinely in all the different frameworks and tools that we could potentially apply in different situations. So thanks for that. So involving an advisor, let's see, some other reasons is you're not quite sure how to do it. You know something's not working. You want your, just fix that now, I'll send it to you anyway. You want your thinking challenged and, you know, some of the blind spots identified, fresh thinking and perspective, realizing that two brains are better than one. You want to accelerate your process to product, market, channel, model fit, which is like not the trinity, but the, you know, the holy grail of what we need to get to when we're launching a new business. Independent, unconventional insights into your business's sales function, or yeah, sometimes you just don't know what's wrong. You're just not quite aware of what could potentially be wrong, and you're, you know, it's like running a business is like smashing your head against a brick wall sometimes. So sometimes it's really important to take a step back and talk to an advisor of some sort. Just start that process and trying to discover how to get things moving correctly. So that provides you a little bit extra fidelity on why you would actually, you know, meet with us and touch base. Yeah, a list of processes we use. So you've seen my kind of my sales process. There's customer success journey, I'll show you that. Customer referral flow, customer reviews and testimonials. And then there's some that I could create, but actually they keep changing. Some of them do, at least. Marketing process tends to be pretty ad hoc, just because, you know, you come up with a marketing initiative, and then I go through a process of scoring them in terms of the potential level of impact. Sometimes I'm greatly wrong, you know. So this morning, I thought it would be a great idea to stand up in front of everyone at Morning Startup and invite them to speed networking. So if you're in WA, then of course you're definitely welcome tomorrow to come to Space Cubed and do speed networking. I thought by announcing that at Morning Startup, that would be, you know, I'd get 10 people signing up immediately. None, zero. How annoying, how frustrating. So I probably should have just stayed in bed. Anyway, I thought that would be hugely impactful, and it wasn't. So that's the case with all of these things. Marketing and sales is not, you know, not an intuitive process. You have to kind of go out there and experiment, see what works, do more of what works, do less of what doesn't work. Classical thing, classical comment of a you know, a business consultant or a management consultant. Partnership formation also happens in a little bit of a haphazard way, although we could map some of the high level elements of what's important, like spending a lot of time in the vicinity of a potential partner. That's really important. And then the email direct marketing registration, like how does that work without breaking all the rules? Because yeah, it's important to make sure that you're not sending the wrong people the wrong information, or the right people the wrong information, or the wrong people the right information. So yeah, it's important. And then part of the management tier, you know, program management tier of the program, they process things like, you know, the feedback. So make sure that we get the positive and also the more difficult feedback that comes through occasionally, and that helps us become better at what we do. So we encapsulate that into our thinking moving forward. And then sometimes people also have financial and invoicing flows that they map out. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Are there any questions? My laptop is very low, so it'll have to be reasonably quick. Otherwise, I'm going to have to move into a common space. But if you've got any questions, maybe what you do is you send it to tristan@businessstation.com.au. Would love to help as much as possible. And if you want to use MIRO and create a sales process, then go for it. There's a link there. I'll send it to you guys. And if you want my feedback on how well you've actually mapped it out, just some you know, offhanded comments, and also some draw on some of my own experience in potentially undergoing a similar sales process or executing a sales plan, which has a lot of similar elements, then of course a conversation will be very beneficial. And yeah, maybe we'll go through an iteration or two together, or we can go through the process of doing it with business modeling. So I've actually got a business model image there. And then, if you're missing any of the other tools, then we can implement those. But thanks so much for listening in. Hopefully that was useful for you. Yeah, very keen to obviously keep in contact. And of course, if you happen to be in Perth, then let me know and we can catch up and hopefully do a bit of speed networking tomorrow. Alrighty, so without further ado, that's all for now. And I will speak to all of you quite shortly. So, is there a brand canvas? I'm pretty sure there is. Yeah, that's a really good point. There's a communication canvases as well, Andrew. So yeah, very good question. Alrighty, I better go because otherwise my laptop's going to die. Bye for now. See ya.